Welcome to another session. I'm Tanya Davis. Today we'll be discussing preference assessments, specifically a paired stimulus preference assessment. And as a quick refresher, a preference assessment is a method to identify preferred toys and activities. The reason we would want to identify preferred toys and activities amongst our students is to identify potential reinforcers. Activities and items and toys that a student prefers are very likely to serve as reinforcers. And reinforcers are particularly important for skill acquisition and behavior reduction. As a teacher, if I am teaching a new skill, I need to be able to deliver a consequence to that student when he or she performs that skill that will reinforce that response. So if I'm trying to teach them to do something brand new, then I want to be able to deliver a consequence that's a reward or a reinforcer. So I need to be able to identify preferred activities, items, and toys that could be reinforcers. Similarly, if I am trying to implement a behavior intervention where I'm trying to reduce a problem behavior, I need to know desired consequences, desired rewards that I could use with that student. If he or she goes a certain period of time without engaging in that problem behavior, I would want to be able to reward that student. Or if I'm teaching that student some replacement skills, perhaps how to communicate versus use problem behavior, then I want to be able to have a reward to deliver when that student engages in those new target behaviors. So in order to do both of these skill acquisition and behavior reduction programs, I have to identify preferred items that can serve as reinforcers. In phase 1, you learned a good deal of preference assessment methods. And so today we're going to focus on that last assessment method that you have not yet been taught, and that's called paired stimulus. The steps to a paired stimulus preference assessment begins with selecting about 5 items. You could select 3 or 4, or you could select 6 or 7. That's absolutely okay. Actually, if there's any preference assessment in which you might want to test a few more items than just 5, a paired stimulus preference assessment is a good test to use, because no matter how many items you select, 5 or 7 or 10, you will only be presenting 2 items at a time, no matter how many you're testing at once. I recommend starting with about 5, but feel free to do a few more or a few less. You're going to sit across the table from the student. You're going to present 2 items at once and instruct your student to choose one of those items. Of course, if your student tries to reach for more than one item at once, block them. If you're not successful at blocking before they're able to reach and grasp 2 items, simply remove the 2 items from their grasp, place them back where they started, and remind the student to choose only one. Once a student selects an item, you're going to allow that student to play or interact with that item for 30 seconds. If it's a food or drink, you're going to give the student enough time to consume that food or drink. That might be a little less than 30 seconds, and it might be a little more than 30 seconds. At the end of that access period, that 30 seconds to play with a selected item or toy, or the amount of time to consume the food and drink, if they selected a toy, you're going to remove that, and now you're going to present the second pair of items. You're going to repeat this presentation of 2 items until you have finished all of the items on your list. And of course, you're going to record data at each presentation, every item that they select, using the Paired Stimulus Preference Assessment data sheet, which you can find in Canvas. All right, so a paired stimulus preference assessment is going to look something like this, where you're presenting 2 objects in each trial. And for each trial, you're simply circling which item the student selected. And let's take a look at that data sheet. At the top, we have the basic information, your student's name, the teacher who's administering this assessment, and the date in which the assessment was administered. Here we have each trial. One trial consists of presenting 2 items, one on your left and one on your right. And you'll notice here that before you start your assessment, you'll need to modify your data sheet so that you can write in what your item A is and what your item B is. For example, your item A may be the Nintendo Switch, your item B, Legos, your item C, a book, and so on. So you're going to want to go ahead and enter that in before you use this data sheet. This data sheet has been set up so that if you simply replace item A with all of your, with your name of your item A, say Nintendo Switch, then you will have a data sheet that will indicate, or that has planned for item A to be presented with items B, C, D, and E an equal number of times, and also once on the left and once on the right. So you'll notice here in trial 1, item A is presented with item B, with A on the left and B on the right. And then if you go further down, you'll see items, that same presentation, but with B on your left and A on your right. So it's counterbalanced. It's actually on trial 11. So every presentation is counterbalanced so that the items are flip-flopped once. Here at the bottom is where you're going to calculate your data. Again, you're going to want to go ahead and write in what your item A is. In this example, Nintendo Switch, you would go ahead and write that in. And then you're simply going to put the number of times they selected that item and divide that by 8 presentations and the percent of opportunities selected. And at the very bottom, you're going to indicate your highest preferred and your lowest preferred item. Your highest preferred is the item that the student selected the most, the highest percent of opportunities, and your lowest preferred is the one that they selected least. If there is an item that they never selected, do not list this as low preferred item. This would be considered a non-preferred item because there is no evidence that the student prefers this to any degree. So low preferred should be the item that was selected but selected the least. Okay, so let's observe a paired stimulus preference assessment.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm ready.
Hey, which one do you want? Look, the car or the dinosaur?
Toy and dinosaur.
Pick one.
Toy.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's a dinosaur.
You can play with it.
Hello.
Oh, thank you.
Dinosaur.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Or the book. Which one do you want?
A book.
Okay. Take it.
Read it.
Read it. Okay, open it.
What's that?
Ooh, what color?
Read it.
What color is it?
Green.
It's green.
And turn the page.
Turn the page.
What's this?
Ooh, what is it?
Green.
Green and
No. Blue. Pink. Green. Pink.
Yeah. Good job. Okay, my turn.
No, I'm red.
Maybe you can read it later.
Okay.
Ready? Pick one.
Dinosaur.
Okay. Go for it.
Dinosaur. Wow! Stop my feet.
You'll notice one thing this teacher is doing really well
Okay, my turn.
is when the student selects, she simply says okay rather than praising a selection.
Or guitar. Which one do you want?
Book.
No, the car or the guitar? Car or guitar?
Toy.
Guitar. Okay.
Toy.
Car.
Yes.
Okay.
So you see that the teacher says okay, so she's not praising a selection, which is really good because we don't want the student to think there is a right and a wrong selection.
Book.
Okay.
Read it. Read it.
Okay, open it.
Read it. Read it. Read it. Oh, read it. Read it. What's this?
What is it?
Jean?
A cool chameleon.
Yes.
Okay, my turn.
No, read it.
Hold on.
Read the seal.
Okay,
Read the seal.
ready? The car or the dinosaur?
Torn dinosaur.
Pick one.
Dinosaur torn.
No, pick one. Dinosaur or car?
Dinosaur torn.
No. Pick one.
Dinosaur torn.
You're being silly. Ready?
Dinosaur.
Okay, cool.
And you can see here the teacher did a very nice job of insisting that the student only select one.
Okay.
I want that for dinosaurs.
Ready? Last one.
No.
Give it to me. Last one.
I want gummy bear.
Ready?
Gummy bear.
Guitar or book?
Okay, so we'll pause right there. This was a very nice demonstration of a portion of a paired stimulus preference assessment. The teacher would need to continue until all items have been presented with every other choice. So guitar with book, guitar with dinosaur, guitar with car. In this particular example, she had only 4 items, so there would be fewer pairs than if she had 5 items. I will recommend that, unlike this video, you ensure that you're using a stopwatch so that the student gets the exact amount of time with every single selection. I recommend 30 seconds, and of course, if you'd rather it be a minute, that is absolutely okay. You'll just need to make sure that it's a minute with every single selection. So the key here is consistency. The other recommendation I have is what to do when the student selects an item. So you noticed with the book, the student wanted the instructor to read with her. And I recommend for people to try to avoid interacting with some toys when they've been selected. And the reason is we don't want the student to think that the book was the good choice because the teacher interacted when the book was selected, but the dino was a bad choice because the teacher did not provide any attention when the dino was selected. So we want to keep from trying to skew or bias the student's selection. We want the selection to be based 100% on their preference and not because they think the teacher has a right and wrong choice. So if you do interact with the student after they selected an item, if that's something that you wish to do, that's okay. Just be sure you're consistent and you interact in the same way for every single choice so as not to bias the student's choice in the future. So let's look at the data sheet. So our student was Lennon and the teacher was Miss Seaver. We have our date of assessment. And before Miss Seaver conducted this paired stimulus preference assessment, she had to prepare her data sheet. So she had to go in and list her specific items. Because she was testing only 4 items instead of 5, she needed fewer trials than were presented in the data sheet that's for you there on Canvas. And if you have more than 5, you'll need to add 2. The thing that's important to remember is that guitar needs to be paired with book, car, and dino. And for each presentation, the guitar needs to be on the left once with the book on the right. And then you need to flip-flop it with the book on the left and the guitar on the right. So you need to do that with every paired presentation. So that presents us with 12 presentations. And we have here the items that should go on the teacher's left and on the teacher's right. And we also, Ms. Seaver has prepared this data sheet by going ahead and filling in the items there on the calculation portion. So if we were to take data as we were watching Lennon and her selections, her first trial she chose car, her second trial she chose book, her third trial she chose dino, her fourth car, her fifth book, her sixth dino, and we saw the seventh, but we did not see the remainder. The video was stopped, so I went ahead and filled those in for us. So if we look at all of these selections and we tally them up, For guitar, she selected that 0 out of 6 possible opportunities to select guitar, and so she selected guitar 0% of opportunities. Book, she selected 6 out of 6 opportunities, so we have 100% selection. Car, she selected 3 out of 6, so we have 50% of opportunities to select were selected. And Dino, she also chose Dino 3 times out of the 6 times the Dino was presented, and so we have 50% of opportunities there. This allows us to indicate that her highest preferred is a book, and her lowest preferred is a tie between the car and the Dino. They were both selected 50% of trials. We would not indicate that a book is preferred at all because, a guitar was preferred at all because she never selected guitar. So we would consider guitar non-preferred because we have no data to indicate Lennon's preference for the guitar. And we would graph those data in a bar graph that looks like this. On the left, you'll see percent of opportunities selected. And across the bottom, you'll see the various toys presented. And it's easy to see with just a glimpse that the book is her most preferred item. It was selected 100% of opportunities. And that guitar is not preferred because there's no data here. She never selected the guitar out of any of the opportunities to select the guitar. So let's talk about some pros and cons of the paired stimulus preference assessment. A pro is we always get a rank order. If you are presenting a multiple stimulus with or without replacement, it may be that the student only selects one item every single time. And so if you actually watch the video for the multiple stimulus with replacement, you'll see that in that video, Atticus always chose animals. So we have no idea if the other 4 items were preferred in any way. All we know is that he prefers animals. It is impossible for a student to only pick one item in a preferred stimulus preference assessment. A single item is not presented during every single paired stimulus choice. Therefore, we're always going to end up with some form of a rank order. So I think you get a little more data, a little more in-depth picture of your students' preferences when you choose a paired stimulus preference assessment. Another pro is there's only 2 choices. So rather than trying to manage 5 items with your data sheet and your timer, like you do in a multiple stimulus approach, you only have to manage 2 items at a time. So it's a little bit easier in terms of material management. In terms of cons, we do have a removal of toys. The example video with Lennon, she did not seem to have many problem behaviors associated with the removal of a preferred item. So this was not a problem for her. But if you had a student who tends to engage in a great deal of problem behavior when their toys or preferred items are removed, you may want to be a little cautious about using a paired stimulus preference assessment because the removal of those toys could trigger problem behavior. And finally, duration is our other drawback. So because you are pairing these toys 2 at a time, it's going to take a much longer amount of time to complete this assessment than one of the multiple stimulus with or without replacement assessments. So you're going to dedicate a little more time. Of course, the more items you test, the longer the assessment will be because each item adds a number of trials. So rather than a test that can be done in just a couple of minutes, you may have to dedicate a little more time. For some teachers and students, it's worth the extra data you get, say with the rank order, to dedicate that amount of time, but that's something that you'll just need to consider when you're choosing your preference assessment. So I hope you found this particular training module helpful and that you might go ahead and give paired stimulus preference assessments a try in your own classroom. And I hope you find the data sheets and the videos helpful for you.